We have a full schedule today for the next 2.5 hours. Um, uh, like I said, later on we have public comment session built into the schedule, and an emergency, or excuse me, a recommendation that will be presented by the, the master plan subcommittee. Now I'd like to turn the meeting over to the BCOB chair, Lieutenant General John D. Hopper. Sir.
Thanks very much, Eugene, and good afternoon, everybody. We'll start in our customary way with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would all stand and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks very much. And welcome again. This is the 14th BCOEB. And as many of you might know, this meeting was originally scheduled, I think, for the 5th of October. But we moved it forward to today to allow the BCOEB to make some timely comments, we hope, and offer recommendations to the Secretary as we update the draft master plan. As many of you know, the BCOEB is chartered as a federal advisory commission. As such, although we can speak individually as a private citizen, we can only comment or make recommendations to the Secretary when we speak as the BCOEB, and as a result of recommendations approved by the board in one of our formally announced in the Federal Register at least 30 days in advance meetings. Today's primary focus will be on the process of updating the draft master plan. I don't mean to exclude comments because there will certainly be comments on content, I should say, not comments, about content. But we're somewhat constrained since we have not seen as yet a full draft of Master Plan 2022-2027. I think it's going to be available for comment on the 8th of October. I may have that date wrong, but I think GLA will correct me. When that full draft is available, then the BCOEB can review it and schedule a meeting in accordance with the FACA rules and make any comments or recommendations that we think are appropriate. I'll conclude my remarks by expressing the board's sincere thanks to Secretary McDonough. The BCOEB expressed its interest in the draft master plan update process as early as 2017. We passed the 3-year point in January 2019 without an update or revision, and now we passed the 5-year mark in January of 2021. If the Secretary had not drawn a line in the sand, it's not clear to me that we would be having this discussion today. But fortunately, Mr. Secretary, thanks to your initiative, we can now gather up all that we've learned, the studies that have been completed, the OIG's review of land use, the progress of the principal developer, new legislation, and other important lessons learned to add refinement and definition to Master Plan 2022-2027. Then we'll be able to move forward and move even closer to realizing the vision of returning this campus not just to a soldier's home, but to a veterans community, supportive, restorative, and energizing. I'll conclude my remarks there, and I think we have Chief of Staff Bradsher standing by perhaps to make some comments. Did Chief Bradsher make it in yet?
Sir, I haven't seen her come up online just yet. I'll defer to Mr. Bursler if he'd care to say anything at this point in time.
Absolutely. Welcome, John Bursler.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me, and appreciate all of your fantastic words. I think that the chief was planning to be here to deliver a few remarks, but as we all know, there's a lot going on in the government this week, and she may have gotten pulled away, but she might be able to join later on. I will be listening in for the entirety of the meeting, and will also be back in Los Angeles next week when Secretary McDonough himself will be touring the West LA VA campus and meeting with all of the experts, including Dr. Braverman and his team, as well as many of the community stakeholders and several leaders from this group. I know he's excited about the trip. I know that Chief Bradsher will also be in attendance, as well as myself and Dr. Jennifer McDonald, who serves as the Secretary's Senior Advisor for Health. And so we're looking forward to very productive meetings, and I hope you all can make it either in person or virtually because of the space constraints that Dr. Braverman and his team are facing. The last thing, one more thing on some of the recommendations, as General Hopper mentioned, we have decided to, in accordance with the recommendation made by VCOAB, extend the public comment phase from 30 to 60 days. So we really appreciate that incredible feedback. I think that will enable us to better shape the new master plan. And we should have some other exciting news to share, if not this week, then certainly next week when the Secretary McDonough is touring the campus. And one last thing, I just would encourage as much collaboration and coordination as possible. I know we are working to get this next version of the master plan completed by early next calendar year, and we all really need your help. As experts, as leaders in the community, we look to you to help us shape this as partners, because obviously no one unit can accomplish the mission on its own. So once again, thank you, General Hopper, for having us today and having me. And I'll be listening in, sir, while I take my oldest to a soccer match here in a few minutes. So thank you all again, and looking forward to seeing you all in person next week. Back over.
Thanks very much, Mr. Birchler. Sounds like you have your priorities in the right order for your activities this afternoon. Okay, Eugene, back over to you. Let's go ahead and we'll start with GLA, and I think Dr. Braverman is up next, and we'll listen if and when Chief Bradsher can join us.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Braverman, over to you.
Okay, thanks very much. Good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, depending upon your time zone here. I want to mention a few things. In addition to what Mr. Borsler mentioned regarding the extension from 30 to 60 days for the comment period after the Federal Registry, we also have put out invitations to all of the local VSOs, multiple stakeholder groups, to have individual briefings and discussion associated with the master plan. I think the week around the 18th, 23rd or so of October. So those are still out, and we've had 30 different slots that folks could participate in. So we want to continue that outreach on whatever level is necessary in order to get appropriate comments. The other thing that I'll mention, and I'm going to put out into the chat box a link right now, is just in the last hour. The new OIG report was published. That's the 5-year or 3-year report, depending upon how one looks at it. 3 years from their last report, 5 years from when this all started. That was just published this afternoon. It essentially found that there was no fraud or abuse ongoing at this time. They identified 7 agreements that they thought were not in accordance with the West LA Leasing Act and other documents, including the 2 that we've been disagreeing with since the 2018 report. The 5 new ones, the VA, VHA also non-concurred with 4 of those. Our OGC legal team and OIG legal team have a difference of opinion in regards to what the law allows. These weren't fraudulent. It was a matter of whether we were using the right process to allow these activities to occur. There was one activity that we deemed on second look to potentially be inappropriate, and we canceled that before the OIG draft report, but that was included among those 5. There was an additional recommendation and finding that 3 of our easements were not included in a capital asset inventory. Our position with the VA was that that wasn't a requirement, but however, we would include that into the asset inventory. So that's been complete and no issues. That was just a record keeping concern. So I put the link up here. If that ends up being an internal link, let me know and I'll try to find a public link if this one doesn't work. But it's interesting reading, especially if you want to read the legal interpretations by both the VA OGC and the OIG legal team in terms of their differences of opinion. But overall, it's a accurate report, depending upon one's viewpoint of what's legal and not legal in that interpretation. The last thing I want to mention, well, actually 2 other things. One related to the encampment in San Vicente. Our condolences to the family and the veterans who were there, the advocates and everyone else involved in the murder that took place a couple of weeks ago. We continue to work with all of those veterans to try to find alternative housing for them. There are many veteran advocates there who are trying to support those veterans and to try to do the same thing, and we appreciate those efforts. However, we continue to get reports from some of the veterans there on San Vicente that there are some advocates who are encouraging veterans not to find alternative housing and to remain there as part of their protest mission. That is not helpful for any of these folks, and I just want to put that out there. Finally, a call for vaccination. We, as far as COVID goes, are essentially a mirror image of what's happening in Los Angeles. We peaked with our inpatient positive COVID patients about 4 weeks ago with high double digits. Since that time, we've been in single digits or low single digits in regards to hospitalized COVID patients. Very few, I think 1 or 2 of them were vaccinated, and both of those cases, they were actually admitted for something else and incidentally were positive for COVID. More than half of our outpatients, however, were vaccinated, which is not a surprise considering the high volume or penetrance of vaccination that we have in the Los Angeles area and among our veteran population, which exceeds 72% a couple of months ago and maybe higher now. What that means is the vaccines are very effective in preventing serious illness and death. In light of that, we also are offering, starting yesterday, actually starting Monday, booster shot vaccinations for Pfizer. For those people 65 and older, the CDC recommended that people should get a booster shot of Pfizer if they've gotten their first 2 vaccines more than 6 months ago. They also recommend in the should category, those people who are 50 years old to 64 years old who have comorbid medical conditions or medical conditions that would contribute to becoming severely ill with COVID. And then they put in the may category those people 18 to 49 who might have comorbid medical conditions, and those people 18 to 64 who may be at risk because of occupational or other exposure. So we're following that kind of prioritization and making vaccination available to veterans, their spouses, and their caregivers associated with that paradigm. So the more the merrier when it comes to vaccination. And so those are my opening comments, and I'll turn it over to Mr. McHenrick to speak to the master plan piece specifically and answer some of the questions that have been asked of us to present here. Over.
Thanks, Dr. Braverman. Matt, you're on.
Okay, we'll go to the next slide. Okay. Eugene, we've got some, okay, there we go. You can see it better. Okay. You could just see the quick agenda here, moving through, as General Hopper said, some of the background on the Master Plan 2022, the update work, and then zoning plan vision, redevelopment, a little bit of view of that, but really focusing on questions that were asked by the VCOEB of us and providing replies to those questions and moving through all those questions. We had 2 series of questions, but we'll move through all that pretty quick. Next slide. So these are the first set of questions we received. We'll just move through these. Wanting to know where in the draft master plan in particular, that document, does it say the revision cycle? And of course it cites there in section 6, page 4, and then page 7, it refers to it in one place as a 3 to 5 year reviews of the draft master plan. And then in another place it refers to a review and reevaluate the draft master plan every 3 years. So that's how VA and GLA determined that the cycle was a 3 to 5 year cycle. Next slide.
General, is it possible to follow up after the reading of the response?
Yeah, I think in this case, if we try to go through all of them and yet board members have questions, it'll be a pretty tough slog. So, but please keep your responses, questions on point and as tight as possible. Thanks. Go ahead, Anthony.
Thanks, sir. Matt, going back to the first question, it notes there that there's a reference to 3 to 5 years several times. And, when we asked the question, we received a response that showed that there was a 3 to 5 year revision timeline in one section. And in that section in particular, I think the context is important. So in past conversations, I think I've said it doesn't say it at all. I'll fully admit that I was wrong in that respect. But the draft master plan is pretty clear as far as a 3 year revision cycle. And the reference to 3 to 5 years is at which point the campus reaches 1,200 units. That's my interpretation. And I know it's all in the past. The one reason why I bring it up is I think moving forward in the revised plan, we need to be crystal clear with respect to the revision timeline. Because I think the master plan subcommittee, even prior to me being on it, had asked questions of VA as far as when the revision cycle was. And it was stated to the master plan subcommittee that it would be every 3 years. So, I understand it's in the past, but we have to fix this moving forward.
Okay, I can take that as input, Anthony, and we'll look for comments on that, and we can discuss that internally as well. I'm not prepared to address that right now. I understand your position. I didn't have the information that you're sharing until now, but I can appreciate your position on that. Okay?
Okay, I just want to iterate, it doesn't say several times in the draft master plan that it would be a 3 to 5 year revision cycle. That's all I'll say.
And this is the 3rd year, asshole.
Fix that.
Okay, we'll keep going.
Yes,
Question
please keep going, Matt.
Okay. Question number 2 addresses, has there been any additional guidance from the secretary that modified the stated revision cycle? The answer is no. It's not been discussed in particular with the secretary that I'm aware of. But at GLA and in managing the draft master plan here, I've not heard of any other difference other than the guidance that we pulled from the draft master plan document itself. Question number 3, will a 60 to 90-day extension to the master plan 2022-27 public comment period prevent the principal developer from securing additional financing? That was a question that was put to the principal developer a few weeks ago. A member of their team addressed that and said that no, it wouldn't affect their financing. Their financing is, some of it's in play already, obviously, for the buildings under construction, and other financing is still being worked. I know they had some specific deadlines tied to fiscal year ends and calendar year end, but the conceptual production that the master plan 2022 going forward looks out will not impact their immediate or near-term financing activities. Some of it, depending on which housing is called forward or would like to be put online sooner, may affect financing, but further down the road, nothing imminently. The question number 4, will 60, 90-day extension master plan 2022 public comment period delay construction activity? We don't foresee that any extension, and we've already talked about the 60 days versus the original 30 days. So it's already in a 60-day extension period as far as the comment period. So when it goes out on the Federal Register, and we anticipate that to be October 8th, as General Hopper stated, it will be roughly a 60-day period. So we will calculate that out. And I have that on a future slide that will show some of that. But it will have no direct impact on current construction activities. Construction is already financed on a timeline and will continue. Next slide. Number 5, whatever it says, West LA leadership made as part of a revising the master plan to evaluate its ability to employ the leasing powers under West LA Leasing Act to facilitate commercial leasing in a town center area, including specifically restaurants, bike stores, other sports shops, other activities for socialization. It is one of the concepts in play, although the priority is housing at this point. So we do have 2 separate leasing agreements that are already being used under the West LA Leasing Act, and that's the Safety Park Corporation to manage the parking lots in the Barrington area, and then the Wadsworth Chapel Heritage Partnership for the restoration of the chapel, as well as providing services and other things in the chapel, which are really promotion of health and wellness, the whole health programs, counseling and those other things, spiritual wellness. So the concept is there and we're starting to use it, but we're looking to bring the housing on first. It's looking for comments on the master plan 2022 going forward as to those other things that you would like in there, those other services. And we've had that as part of the website from the beginning of this effort here a few months back. And we'll go over that again on a later slide and show you where that information can be added. It's anticipated that the service lease strategy will continue to be utilized for many different aspects. And this goes into an answer to another question, but it really focuses on the fact that the Office of General Counsel came out and said that the enhanced use lease provisions in West LA by law are limited to just the housing aspect of the buildings, and that it does not allow the principal developer or other entities doing an enhanced use lease to add services to that, and that by any other means. They're required to provide counseling services and things like that, social services that are associated with the enhanced use lease. And if you look at building 209, they have the building itself, and then they have folks who monitor and do counseling for the veterans there related to their housing and other needs as residents. That's the same type of service that can be tied to or used with the enhanced use lease. But things outside of that, adding all of those other things into a building that's been designated for enhanced use lease is not permitted at this time. So we're working through what those concepts would look like and how we would use the revocable license or that other service lease area of the West LA Leasing Act to allow those other things to be added to the community. So it's on the same line.
General Hopper, it's Josh Bamberger. May I ask a question concerning the services?
Yes, Josh, please go ahead.
Thank you for clarifying what can be done with the enhanced use lease. Does this also apply to what services can be provided by VA staff? For example, nursing staff or medical staff could also be offered in the buildings, the supportive housing sites. Is there any prohibition on that, as far as you know, or is that still
There is.
indicated?
The concept is that the government, the federal government, VA, is giving up the enhanced use lease building for enhanced use lease. So the underlying concept is we as the government VA do not have an immediate need or need for that building, and therefore we can give it to that program. It's kind of similar to what HUD does with the buildings as they determine unused federal buildings can be turned over for housing. But what it prevents us from doing is saying, we're going to turn this over for housing because we don't need it. But if you, the developing entity, come in and redevelop it, we'll come back and put services in there because we need it again. Well, that's not allowed. If you give the building up because you don't need it, then you can't come back and reoccupy portions of the building. But that doesn't mean as we develop the community that we can't put those services nearby in other buildings that are still maintained by VA. And that's kind of the plan that we're leaning into is how do we build the community knowing these limitations and restrictions, and how do we ensure that we have those other services nearby, whether they're VA services or whether there's some of these other services that are listed in the question as to sports activity or restaurants or socialization. How do we get them and keep them in the community or that town center area, but not necessarily have them in the EUL building itself? And of course, we're working with OIG and what the law looks like and what the opportunities might be to change some of these things to develop the community even further, because it is unique and different across the country.
Thanks. Yeah, I certainly don't have any skills or understanding of what the limitations are in terms of the UL and so on, but it certainly is out of standard for what supportive housing is about, which is, services integrated into housing of a wide variety of different services based on the needs of the individuals who are living there. So I look forward to exploring this further because it does seem to be handcuffing the opportunity of delivering innovation for the veterans that will be served. Thank you.
General, this is Anthony. Can I ask a follow-up as well?
Yes, Anthony, go ahead.
Is there a reason that Brentwood School isn't listed here on the slide? I mean, they're a lease, right, under Section 2B2 of the Leasing Act?
No, we were looking at the service leases specifically in this area. I don't know why Brentwood wouldn't be listed there. To that same degree, of course, we have the oil use on the campus. And while that's not a service lease, the revenues from that do go to specifically providing services.
Okay, so theoretically it should be on there, right, as a recreational service lease?
That they do provide recreational services, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Next question. Okay, here we go. So has the West LA leadership and the principal developer discussed at all the concept of the principal developer should be responsible for a particular project area on the campus, understanding that the contractual relationship between West LA and the principal developer is governed by enhanced use lease of specified buildings? Has the West LA leadership decided that beyond buildings, certain areas of the campus should fall under the primary jurisdiction of the principal developer? And if so, what areas? So the EUL authority and the West LA Leasing Act they can develop a enhanced use lease building, and they get the parcel of land, which includes the building and the immediate area around the building. So they have to maintain the immediate area around the building, but what they don't get is all the roadways, all the connecting areas, all the other open space. In building a community, if you were to engage a principal developer to do a community plan in this non-federal VA environment, they would develop the entire community and then bring in different entities to manage or upgrade or deal with each area. As VA maintains all of the property and only the enhanced use lease parcel of land transfers over to the PD or the enhanced use lease entity for each parcel of land, which is the building and the immediate area surrounding it, all of the remainder of the North Campus, all of the remainder of the other land stays with VA. VA has the responsibility to upgrade it. And in this case, and the discussion we're having, would have somewhat of the responsibility to engage others to come in and provide those enhanced use lease type services. This would be those other things we're talking about, whether it be for socialization, for activities, even the medical areas. If we were to bring some other medical services closer to that area in the North Campus, GLA would have to use existing space and existing buildings. We can't, at this point, we don't have any authority to cross that line between what is operated under the Enhanced Use Lease Authority and is managed by the Enhanced Use Lease lessee or lessor entities. And the Enhanced Use Lease is signed with the Office of Asset Enterprise Management. So they are the primary leaseholder, not even us here at GLA. So we work very closely with them on these enhanced use leases, but all the other surrounding area remains with VA or GLA in this instance. So we have thought about, with the decision from the Office of General Counsel, how we support the rest of the community development and how we engage outside entities to, want to come in and provide a grocery store to some degree, or we use the canteen services that VA has for those types of activities, whether it be a coffee shop, a grocery store, those types of things. Okay. We see that primarily through the revocable license authority. Next slide. So this is a slide we've shown at the master plan town halls, and we have 2 more town halls scheduled for tomorrow. Just walking through the tasks, you can see at that bottom right area, we've extended to about 12/18. December 18th would be the 60-day period. So if we open on the 8th of October for public comment on the master plan 2022 draft, then that would close on the 18th of December. So that's our target at this point. That's what we've moved ahead with the revised guidance from the Secretary. Then you can see we work all these tasks throughout the entire process, focusing at different times on different tasks, but really running that overall master plan update the entire time, because that's where we're taking input and comment from folks the entire time. Next slide. This is just a quick list of activities. There's been the August 19th kickoff town halls. There's been the September 9th town halls. We're having a series of town halls tomorrow that I mentioned. We've also engaged in a special pilot here to engage the veterans living on campus and living in this area with a bit of a questionnaire that they can fill out, and we can take, assuming they aren't in their homes, they aren't settled. Many of them are homeless. Some are receiving treatment here or in other programs, some not related to homelessness, but wanted to give them the opportunity to participate and use their voice. So we're working on capturing that. We talked about the 60-day Federal Register comment period, October 8th through 12/18. And then we have offered the forums that Dr. Braverman talked about. So in the week after the document is shared through the Federal Register on the 8th, The week after that, the 12th through the 15th is a shortened holiday week, but starting the full week on the 18th, for 10 business days, the 18th through the 29th of October, and then even extending it further if we need to for some entities, we're offering to provide a short briefing on the master plan 2022 draft, and then really a dialogue or question answer session in a forum about what's in there, what's not in there, what people would like to see, what they're questioning, what they might want to know a little more about that we might be able to answer in questions. But just having those individual engagements with groups or entities that would like to schedule one of those. So we've sent out some invites to a number of groups, probably closer to 20 entities, reaching out for feedback. We're set to send out some more invites, just looking for engagement opportunities. Next slide. So we talked about the town halls tomorrow. You can see those listed there. And then what's going to be different? We ask ourselves what's different about each of these engagements now that we're a few more weeks down the road. What else can we share? What can we talk about? So opportunities and constraints, we went over those in pretty detailed in the last engagement town halls, but also talking about decisions that we've had to make. Those working on the master plan have come up with 3, 4, 5 different options, looking at constraints and opportunities. What decisions have we narrowed it down to, and what that looks like going into the master plan 2022 draft. We'll be able to review stakeholder feedback and then inviting additional veterans and other stakeholders to provide feedback on specifically the amenities and things that we're talking about in that previous question from the VCOEB as to what is it you would like to see on the campus? What is it you think that veterans will need or that you need as a veteran and that we might be able to consider adding to the campus, getting all that input back. Next slide.
Again, General Harper, it's a quick question, Josh Bamberger.
Go ahead, Josh.
Mac, it's wonderful that you're taking, such great efforts to get information from the community. But one question that I've often had that I'm curious if you can answer at this time or later is, how do you know what the veterans need in terms of looking at the overall veteran homeless community in the greater Los Angeles area? What data are you driving? Are you pulling in to make decisions as to what intensity of services, what employment services are necessary, how many units are necessary for women, seniors, and so on? I don't expect you to be able to answer that question quickly and easily right now. And I'm hoping that these data can be an integral part of the decisions as to what goes into the draft master plan, as I have not seen any of those data for a long time. And it's hard for me to imagine that the draft master plan will be an accurate reflection of the needs without having done some sort of thorough assessment in this area. I wonder if you have anything you can comment on that, please.
So if we can just go forward one slide for a second, that'd be great. So in this area, I've shared this in the draft master plan sessions that we've had where we're doing the town halls, but taking the draft master plan, housing and services need, you can see that's in section 2 of the draft master plan. And you can see where that walks across to different areas that are already in the community plan, which I'll talk about on the previous slide in just a second. But also we're in there updating the master plan for master plan 2022 so that that data is somewhat current with what we see today and incorporating that with the data that came from the 2016 draft master plan, which was data pulled previously to the execution of the master plan. So that data is anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 years old. But looking at new data in there, needs assessments, we do have ongoing engagement in our CTRS, our Community Engagement Reintegration Service, our homeless program under the chief of it, Matt McGarren. They have an employment group there that are out. They have outreach groups. They have liaison groups. We have a policy meeting every quarter with the city and other stakeholders, LASA and others. So we are in that environment. We are getting that information now. And we're looking at the Master Plan 2022 to make sure that what's put in there is what we know is current operating procedures and needs and services that are already engaged out there. And as we know, the population is moving to a more elderly population that we're serving in the VA environment, in the VA housing environment. And we want to make sure we're keyed on some of those services that are more important and more necessary for that population. So there is a nod to that, and you'll see that when the draft master or the master plan draft of 2022 comes out on the 8th. We back up
Sir,
one slide.
General, can I add to that? It's Anthony.
Yes, Anthony, go ahead.
Mac, in the draft master plan, again, not to beat a dead horse in the revisions, but within one of the sections, permanent supportive housing projections, it called on VA to update the target on campus every 3 years. And in January of 2019, I believe that number briefed out to the Federal Advisory Committee was 1,239 units. So what's the latest projection in terms of need for permanent supportive housing on campus for veterans? What's the need?
I would have to go get that information, Anthony. I don't have that here.
Okay.
Okay. This slide in particular shows some of the resources that are already available. They're on the West LA draftmasterplan.org website, and there's a Master Plan 2022 tab that you can select. And as you go through there, you'll see these resources, the Programmatic Environmental Impact Statement, which really took us several years to get approval from the state, which works in coordination with federal environmental folks, to make sure that what we're trying to develop on the campus is allowable and sustainable on the campus by the size of the campus and the terrain. The draft campus historic resource plan is there. The principal developers draft community plan is there. As well as we just have a visual of the South Campus. It's not a master plan per se, as we're integrating what our construction and facilities management office would call a master plan for VA construction of healthcare and supporting healthcare sites. We're integrating that into the master plan 2022 as an overall West LA campus master plan. And then of course the metro information is there about the metro station and their construction and timeline information that's available at this point, as well as some information about our utility study that took well over a year to study 8 different utilities and break out where the North and South Campus enhancements need to be in utilities to support the South Campus Medical Center reinvestments, as well as the North Campus permanent supportive housing and other community service developments. Next slide. We talked about these slides just track through where different sections of the draft master plan completed in 2016 tracks with some of the current documents that we're doing now, but the update of those sections will track, and you'll see that when the master plan draft comes out on the 8th. Next slide. And this is just a continuation of that with sections 4, 5, and 6. And you can see where different sections lead in, and we will update those sections accordingly as you'll see in the document that comes out on the 8th. Next slide. This is just a quick review. We're a few slides away from the end here, but I have a few more questions back towards the end, but just wanted to share the overall information here. Job training and VA processes are the most important hits that we've had so far on input. Our questionnaire has it broken down into these particular areas. We've received 25 questions from the September 22nd town halls and 10 questions from the September 9th town halls. Next slide. So I talked about the West LA draftmasterplan.org website and that tab there. that's highlighted is really the Master Plan 2022 tab. That's on the right-hand side. You can go underneath that and see an informational concept paper, which is about 15 pages or so. It talks about the master plan effort, what we're doing. It gives a lot of background for folks that are not familiar with it without having to dig into the master plan executive summary or the master plan document itself. The draft community plan is there, so you can get a hold of that and look at that and download that if you need to. And then Town Hall presented materials that we've used in previous town halls, the slides, and in particular, some of the graphics we talked about and used of the terrain as far as constraints and opportunities and other things are there for viewing. Next slide. So at that same site, when you hit the Master Plan 2022, if you go all the way to the bottom, there's an area where you can complete a questionnaire, which has those different categories. It has some room for free text, so you can add some paragraphs of free text, but you can also attach documents if you want to, if you have something more lengthy or diagrams or other things or other material you want to share, you can attach those to your response and upload that. So you would just go there, click, fill out the survey, the information, attach anything you would want to, and then click submit, and we would receive that feedback. And we go through that feedback every few days to see who submitted what and look it over and consider it in the process wherever we're at in that process. Next slide. So those were the first set of questions. If we go to the next slide, I have a handful of additional questions that came in, and we'll just work through those pretty quickly. So has there been an effort to figure out how to get naming rights for contributors to the site for corporate sponsorship? Other than saying it isn't possible, has anyone looked into this in detail? Do you think it's a good source to both cover the shortfall and help bring in the project on board sooner? I assume source of revenue is what we're talking about. Should someone want to donate based on being able to name a building, a street, or a piece of property? So 38 USC 531, according to our general counsel, is the rule. And we do not have flexibility in there. It expressly provides by law a facility, structure, or real property of the department, and a major portion, which is a wing or floor of any such facility or structure or real property, may be named only for the geographic area in which a facility, structure, or real property is located.
Hey, Mac,
That,
this is
there's a
Eugene.
process that goes through Congress for approval.
Mac, this is Eugene. If I can jump in, sir.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. We have the Chief of Staff of the VA, Ms. Bradshaw, on the line. Ma'am, welcome.
I am so sorry, General Hopper. It's so good to see you.
Ma'am, we can barely hear you. Can you speak up just a little bit, please?
A little bit. Let's see. Is that better?
A little bit better. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Better? Okay. So first and foremost, I apologize that I'm just getting on. We unfortunately have to do all the wickets of government shutdown meetings. And so I apologize. I presume everyone knows that the secretary, myself, and a team from VA are coming to California next week. We also thank you, General Hopper, for your feedback for the comment period. We extended that to 60 days. So just wanted to make sure that everyone was tracking that. I presume you've already, and I apologize for being here so late. But the secretary is looking forward to hitting the ground in LA, seeing the sites, being briefed, and meeting with folks. And so thank you so much for the guidance and feedback that we've received. Really appreciate it. Please keep it coming. And we really look forward to the trip. I do have to say that if we are not funded, we will have to postpone that trip. So we go with the CR. But as of right now, we are, for all intents and purposes, Advance is already on the ground. We will be there next week. So just wanted to say hi, and I'm so sorry. I do need to jump into another meeting with our ledge team to figure out next steps and to hear what else we need to do. Is there anything you have for me before I have to jump? And I'm so sorry.
No, Chief, thanks very much. We appreciate you taking the the time. We know how busy everybody is in the Capitol these days. So we're very appreciative, though, of your comments and the actions that you all have taken already to make this the best update for the master plan.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'll be in touch. Thank you, Dr. Braverman. Thanks, Mac. And have a wonderful day. And let's hope for the CR so that we can just continue to do our jobs. Take care, team. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Back over to you, Mac. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
Okay, great. So we have strict guidance from general counsel. It's one of those areas where we're engaging on dialogue of how this is a different effort out here. We're building an entire community. What else can we do? There are some things that are done for donors that we're trying to capitalize and see how those were done for other donors and see how
Thanks a
we
lot,
can do that.
Chad.
Okay. So at this time, we're still at the 38 USC section 531 that rules how federal entities can do this. Next slide.
Sir, can I follow up on that?
Yes, Anthony, go ahead.
On that particular reg or code, I understand that to be applicable to VA facilities. Is that correct?
That particular goes to VA facilities. I understand that as well.
Okay, so what happens, for example, when VA property is leased out? Let's be specific. So for example, with UCLA, right? I mean, we know that UCLA is using naming rights on this campus to fund improvements to the baseball facilities. There's 3 or 4 different facilities within the UCLA lease that have naming rights today. And yeah, I guess the question came from a colleague who couldn't be here today, but it gets down to the point that if UCLA can use these naming rights, why can't veterans to execute aspects of the draft master plan? You know,
And we caught that question from you last month, Anthony, and we've advanced that to the Office of General Counsel, and we're working through that with them, and we're actually waiting on their reply. So that is the follow-up as we continue to work this.
okay, we got to work through that. That's a big one, because if the argument is that the town center can't be constructed because there's no obvious funding streams, and other leaseholders are using naming rights on this campus, why can't veterans have that capability as well? I think that's a fair question to ask. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, going on to question number 8. How many EULs have been executed at this point? There are 4 of them. Building 209 was executed and came online in 2017. 205, 7, and 8 are under construction right now. So the enhanced use lease has been signed, and therefore they have already begun construction. This next question asks how many are pending, and really to get into pending, we can look at the phasing that the principal developer proposes and utilizes, and you'll see that in the draft community plan, phase 0, 1, 2, 3, each of the phases laid out as you go across there. So we're in phase 0, leaning into phase 1. So there are multiple phase 1 EULs in the process of execution to include MacArthur Field, parking lot 38, parking lot 48, parking lot 156, parking lot 157, building 300. At this time, these phase 1 EULs are still undergoing negotiations with the Office of Asset Enterprise Management and the developer for each, or the principal developer concept, to figure out which ones come first, which ones don't. Part of that is funding and when funding would be available and how the funding stream comes together so that the funding can be visualized and seen in the enhanced use lease so that it's a complete package. So that's the process that we're in now getting those. And I can tell you from a construction preparation and turnover and utility work here on the campus, those are the parcels that we're working on hardest to get funded for next year. We've already done $19 million worth of turnover activity and projects this year for assessments to see what needs to be done on these parcels. And we're lining up for more than $50 million going into next year that we've already asked for through the budget process, so that we can go after what's turning out to be about 15 different projects. And those will work out into smaller projects as we get those properties or parcels ready to be turned over.
General Hopper, question about this process. So from what you said earlier, Mac, the determination of the services that are being offered in each of these buildings is made at the time of the inking of the EUL. What sort of community input is offered to influence the decisions around those things? This is quite, I've never heard of such a thing. Maybe others are familiar with this, but this is quite surprising to me, and wondering, given that the oversight of our board is here to provide oversight, and if we don't, not part of the EUL signing, then we kind of the ship has left, the cow's out of the barn. So tell me more about this process and how there can be a community oversight, please.
I think there's a mischaracterization that the services are determined at the time the EUL would be signed. I don't want to speak for the Office of Asset Enterprise Management, but it's my understanding that when you develop an enhanced use lease building for permanent supportive housing in this nature, there's everyone in there in some capacity needs some type of assistance with the housing, because it's federally provided housing. It's through this program per se, and that there is a counseling aspect or a social work aspect that is tied to that housing, and that they have to have that service available. I am not aware of any other service that has to be tied to or that's negotiated at that period of time for a particular enhanced use lease. If a facility, I think one of the enhanced use lease buildings in Sepulveda has a kitchen in it, there was a discussion as to how the kitchen would be used because it was in the building. I don't know how that goes into the enhanced use lease part, but I don't know of a discussion or an agreement that any other types of services are added to a enhanced use lease housing building.
All right, we'll move on, because I'm well out of my comfort space. I don't know enough about it, but I do want to just say that, you know, rapid rehousing, short-term housing, other things that don't put a anchor around a veteran's neck so that they can't leave government-supported housing, is strategies that have been amplified all over the country. So people move into housing with time-limited rent support so that they're motivated to get back into the workforce and then leave that government housing. If the only option that's available on the campus is housing that uses a HUD-VASH voucher, which goes on indefinitely, then we're limiting the innovation opportunities to motivate veterans to more self-sufficiency. And on the other end of the spectrum, for people who need nursing services or food provided for them and so on, if that's not offered, integrated into the services, then things will be concretized wherever they are, and it limits the opportunity. So I want to learn more, and I look forward to you teaching me where these things can be integrated and discussed and have community oversight, which is our charge. Thanks.
So let me just provide a quick answer here, and this would be a great discussion later, and I could show you a different slide that shows the different levels of the types of housing available at West LA, but the Draft Master Plan and the principal developer are engaged for 1,200 units of permanent supportive housing. So that's the predominant focus here. We do have the low barrier to entry CTRS. We do have emergency shelter housing with a bridge home on the campus. These are all on the campus. We do have the domiciliary for treatment and other programs. We do have graduated supportive housing all the way up to building 209 with permanent supportive housing. So it's not to say that these other things, including 2 community living centers, CLC, nursing facilities are on the campus as well. We do have those other things in this environment, but the focus here has been on the permanent supportive housing and the enhanced use lease process. Okay. Moving on, the number 10, the Master Plan 2022 informational document states at the state level, and this gets a bit technical, CEQA, or Notice of Determination, was filed in June of 2021 by Los Angeles County. Does the CEQA Notice of Determination apply to the entire campus or just specific projects? And then we worked with OAM on this, our Office of Asset Enterprise Management. The LA County Development Authority, the Los Angeles County Development Authority, approved funding for supportive housing and buildings 156 and 157. And part of their approving of funding is to ensure that there's environmental compliance. So they adopted the Programmatic Environmental Impact Statement, the PEIS, that the federal government had done for the campus, and they said that that meets their requirements for a CEQA. So we expect that they will continue to accept that as they move forward and approve these funding packages for development of the housing on the campus. So that's the basic answer without making it too terribly technical. Next slide.
Mr. McHenrick,
Yes.
the just one last thing on the last slide.
Please
This is
identify
Scott
yourself,
Mulvaney.
please.
Who's speaking?
Yes, this is Scott Mulvaney.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name.
I had a question. Yes, Scott Mulvaney. I'd gotten a question from the
Scott, I'm sorry I had to mute you. I don't take questions from the attendees. So go ahead, Max.
Okay, so number 11, the Master Plan 2022 rebranding to Master Plan 2022 versus 2022-2027. I probably didn't read that question right. What we wanted to do, and it was a valid point someone brought up along the way, that why are you saying it's a Master Plan 2022-2027 when it could be reevaluated anywhere between 3 to 5 years? So we acknowledged that this would be the plan executed here in 2022, and we don't want to give the impression of predetermination that it would automatically last until 2027. As was pointed out earlier by Anthony, it could be revisited earlier at the 3-year mark. Anywhere between the 3 to 5 year mark is what we see. So we just changed the name to take away any confusion over that. Next slide, slide 12 of the town hall. Slide 12 of the town hall on 9/9 stated that the land south of the Columbarium UCLA baseball stadium area may require significant mitigation measure to clean up. Just wanting to clarify what was meant by those statements. In general, it's because a portion of the West LA campus is more of an industrial area. That's where the oil field is. That's where GLA in that area has its warehouse, its maintenance areas, other things. And there's been no significant study in that area as to all the items that may be underground as far as utilities. We have power, steam, water, gas, telecommunications, other things underground in that area. So by cleanup, it isn't meaning necessarily a biological type cleanup as much as it might be cleanup to do other things in those areas or turn some of that land over or move some of those operations around. You'll see in the Master Plan 2022 document, there's concepts for how we might better utilize some of that land in that area and reclaim some of that land, especially from the oil entity that's out there that has some underutilized land that we might be able to use. So that's what that reference was into. Question 13 asks about an Advantis federal.
General, sorry, Mac, before we move on, General, can I follow up on that?
Yes, Anthony.
Mac, the PEIS did not study that area, or did it?
I would have to go back and look at that, Anthony, but I'm not convinced that the PEIS went all the way through that area.
Okay. And the reason why I brought this up and the reason why it concerned me is at the last town hall, there was a site analysis and it indicated that the area just south of the columbarium, which would be zone 5 in the draft master plan, which was contemplated to be a veterans vocational training center, may require significant mitigation measures and cleanup. And so if the idea or the plan on behalf of this revision is to relocate that veterans job training center from that area and put it somewhere else, I just feel like that it's a little misleading, in terms of when I saw that, I said, oh, okay, well, there's a significant environmental issue here. What does that look like? And I understand it says may require, but if it says may require, I'd have to believe that there is some documentation to suggest that it would. And what I'm hearing now is that there's not a source document that says that this area would require significant mitigation measures.
Right, not that I'm aware of, Anthony. It's just that we do have a lot of our industrial activities in that area. The motor pool, the maintenance shops, our steam plant, and the oil plant is there. And that's really what's concentrated in there, in warehouse. And we have some emergency services things down there. So we just haven't studied that area significantly. That's not been a primary focus. That's it. What we see is some of the out year activities and the master planning activities. We're primarily focused on the housing in the other zones, not in that outer ring area zone out there, but also trying to address some of the things that were contemplated by the master plan, such as job training and other things.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Matt,
question.
this is John Hopper. Just, if you would though, please verify for us with the PEIS, whether this area was surveyed or not, or part of the PEIS.
I've got that, sir.
Okay, thanks.
I was hoping my team would text me, but they're out. Okay. The Avantis Federal in question 13, a consultant or is it a consultant or subgroup of GLA, OAM, CFM, Concourse, Federal, our consultants here, or Veterans Collective? We are not aware of them being associated with any of the entities that we've checked here. So that would be a no from our point of view. Is the timeline for present construction independent from finalization of the revised master plan? If not independent, please explain. So the principal developers stated previously that they didn't see a significant impact on moving forward because of the master plan 2022. And if there were a extension to that, nor did they see any slowdown in construction. The buildings that are already under construction will continue regardless of how long the process might take with the master plan. And I think what was proposed was that 60 to 90 day extension period. And what they're really looking at is at the phases, and they're in this phase and they're leaning into the next phase, and this process including what's really phase 0 and into phase 1 and those activities, it wouldn't have a significant impact. Next slide.
Sorry, sir, it's Anthony again. Mac, to go back to this question, I think a lot of people assume that the master plan revision and the EULs are tied together. Is that your understanding, that there's a dependency between the two? For example, that an EUL could not move forward if there was not a revised master plan?
The EULs, and we're tracking with the priority of work in the draft master plan, the principal developers draft community plan. And we have those parcels and we've assessed those parcels, and we see that as the way forward, working on the processes for how to get each of those parcels moved into an EUL agreement. GLA doesn't see another way of doing it other than this parcel timetable that's been presented by the principal developer who we've engaged to help move this process forward. So yes, we're committed to that process. The question says, is a 60 or 90-day delay going to impact things? Not necessarily. If you were to look at it from the tactical, operational, and strategic levels, we are tactical and we are engaged and we are doing construction. We are already readying the next set of parcels to be turned over. That's somewhat tactical into operational. And then as we lean out into the better part of the end of next year, into the following year and the years after, that's leaning on the back end of operational into strategic. And that's really what we're trying to shape.
Sure, I understand, but the question itself wasn't specific to a 60 to 90-day extension. The question is construction or approval of EULs independent of a master plan revision? So for example, just hear me out. If this revision process was not happening, could VA move forward with an enhanced use lease on its own? And I think the answer is yes.
We have a path that we're going on independent of the master plan revision. The revision is taking place. When the master plan revision is done, if it adjusts anything that we're doing right now, we will continue to adjust that. But the question somewhat asks, how committed are you down the path of already doing EULs and already doing things? We know that 205, 207, and 209 are already committed and construction is underway. We know that financing packets for a few more have been worked, that we talked about 156, 157 that have gone through the CEQA process. So anything beyond that, is there room for adjusting? Sure, there's room for adjusting those things. Anytime you're doing construction or development, there's a point where you've already made decisions and you're committed, and to adjust would be a significant impediment or additional cost to adjust or to pay for an adjustment. We've determined the building will go here, and we've already laid some things in the ground. Now we're going to change that because of the master plan 2022, and it's going to go somewhere else, and we have to remove and relay that. So there's a cost, and how do we do that? So we don't see any challenges in that way at this point.
Yeah, for example, let's say the revision comes through in early 22, but in late 22, you realize that there's an infrastructure problem and you need to work around it. It's not like you just stop and say, well, you know, the master plan says it's going to go here, so that's the only option. I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that the master plan is a visionary document. It's a guiding document with the understanding that, you know, there are realities to construction and financing, and things change. And the reason why I bring it up is because we've heard an argument that, you know, again, an extension to the master plan revision process for the purpose of additional, you know, public comments and engagement would somehow, you know, prevent construction or financing from moving forward. And I think the public doesn't have a good understanding of how those two are related or not related. And I think it would be helpful moving forward explaining that, you know, the EUL authorities, the financing, all of these things are not tied to the master plan, that it's really a separate document that's meant to instruct what the campus should ideally look like, but it's not, you know, rigid in that respect. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're trying to say. And then, you know, there are unforeseen things under the ground here when we dig, or do foundations, we find things. I referenced earlier that we don't know where all those utilities are. And, you know, these commitments to move these things and to put these things, each of them either comes with a partnership funding through the EUL, or VA has to find the money to do those things, to relocate those things and turn over those buildings, or to maintain buildings in particular areas and upgrade the utilities so that they can provide those services in those areas. And, you know, we can plan that, but 3, 5, 7, 10, 15 years out, will those funds be available? We can't speak to that. We can plan for it and we can have a vision, but you're absolutely correct in the fact that we we can't control the timing or the availability of some of these resources, either in the community to the principal developer concept or of EUL development or through the VA budget in the future.
All right. Thank you.
That's all I had, sir.
Hey, sir, if I can just interject real quick, just for the information only for the attendees, I just want to apologize that the briefings and presentations are for the benefit of the VCOB board members, and the time allotted for question and answers are reserved for them as well. So we cannot take questions from the attendees. Thank you. Sir, back over to you.
Okay, thanks, Eugene. Next on the agenda is the Master Plan Subcommittee discussing a recommendation for the master planning process. Mr. Allman.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. As the fellow committee members know, the Master Plan Subcommittee has been hard at work. We've looked at this issue, I think, from all different angles. We've attended all the meetings. We've had subcommittee meetings. And we believe that there's a better path forward. And this recommendation, and again, it's just a recommendation, sets out a course that VA could choose to accept, which would recreate, I think, the conditions that made the original draft master plan so successful. And the original draft master plan, if folks were around, back then, had an incredible amount of community input, over 1,000 public comments, and the credibility of the draft master plan, I think, was founded in that extensive community outreach. I understand that VA has done some meetings and focus groups, and I think that that's great in terms of guiding what that preliminary draft will look like. But once that draft becomes public, I think VA needs to do a very intense public outreach effort to show the veteran community what its plan is for this campus moving forward. So this draft recommendation attempts to address that. It lays out some information so the public can understand where we're coming from. And I'll go ahead and read it into the record, and then I think we can discuss it after. And I apologize for the length, but again, we're catching up on many years here, and there's a history that I think needs to be understood. So with that, I'll go ahead with the reading. Whereas one of VCOB's core functions is to provide the Secretary of Veterans Affairs with advice and recommendations on the creation and implementation of any successor master plans at VA West Los Angeles. Whereas on October 22nd, 2015, VA posted a preliminary draft master plan document to regulations.gov for a 45-day public comment period. Whereas on January 28, 2016, after 100 meetings and over 1,000 public comments, the draft master plan was adopted by VA Secretary Bob McDonald. Whereas the draft master plan executive summary, as well as section 2 and section 6, called for 3-year revisions of the plan on 6 separate occasions. Whereas section 6, section A, methodology, additional capacity 740 of the draft master plan states, this capacity can absorb future demand based on need as local and regional demand analyses are updated through the 3 to 5 year reviews of the draft master plan. In context of the relevant section and the broader draft master plan, VCOEB interprets this as modifying the master plan 3-year revision cycle once after delivery of housing on campus reaches 1,200 units, potentially reducing the need for more frequent master plan revisions. Whereas the draft master plan is nearing 6 years since its adoption without any subsequent revision. Whereas on September 29, 2016, President Obama signed the West LA Leasing Act of 2016, Public Law 114-226. In addition to housing, the Leasing Act expressly empowers VA to lease real property on campus for up to 50 years for the purpose of nutrition, recreation, vocational training, socialization, and other activities for the principal benefit of veterans. Such leasing powers may be used to facilitate development of a town center and Veterans Vocational Enterprise and Cultural Center projects that serve both resident and non-resident veterans throughout the greater Los Angeles area, independent of VA's enhanced use lease authority set forth in Section 2B1 of the West LA Leasing Act of 2016. Whereas on January 14th, 2019, VA GLA-HS provided VCOEB a homeless veteran gap analysis and SIRS updates presentation, which indicated that the gap in resources for chronically homeless veterans eligible for VA healthcare and in need of permanent supportive housing was 1,239 units. The need for 1,239 permanent supportive housing units was confirmed again in a subsequent September 27th, 2019 SIRS report on a data-driven approach to reduce veteran homelessness. Whereas on January 21st, 2021, VCOEB received a briefing from VA GLA-HS on the status of the reintegration district, including the Veterans Vocational Enterprise and Cultural Center, in which VA GLA-HS stated, currently, VA does not have the appropriate authority to add services outside of housing to the campus. VCOEB understands this to be inaccurate. VA has already executed leases with leasees such as Brentwood School, Safety Park Corporation, and Wadsworth Chapel Heritage Partners pursuant to Section 2B2 of the West LA Leasing Act of 2016. Whereas VCOEB also understands VA's lease agreement with the Regents of the University of California, including First and Second Amendments, were executed pursuant to Section 2B3 of the West LA Leasing Act of 2016. Whereas on May 4th, 2021, VA GLA-HS informed VCOEB that the timeline for the master plan update is not yet known. Whereas on June 21st, 2021, Secretary Dennis McDonough provided remarks to the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans annual conference stating, "We're going to drive progress on a successor master plan. I'll sign it before year's end. We'll take to heart what veterans, their families, the community, and our Federal Advisory Committee on West LA recommend." Whereas on June 23rd, 2021, President Biden signed the West LA VA Campus Improvement Act of 2021, Public Law 117-18, which extended VA's authority to engage in enhanced use leases on campus for a period of up to 99 years. As a result, enhanced use leasing activity that will take place between now and the next master plan revision may be even more instructive to future land use possibilities and should be subject to intensive review and consideration. Whereas on August 19th, 2021, VA GLA-HS conducted a Master Plan 2022-2027 kickoff town hall. At that time, VA GLA-HS leadership indicated that a preliminary draft would be distributed across the public domain for comment middle to late September. Whereas on September 9th, 2021, VA GLA-HS conducted a second town hall, this time informing the public that a preliminary draft of the Master Plan 2022-2027 is tentatively scheduled for the first 2 weeks of October for a 30-day public comment period. Whereas on September 30th, 2021, VA GLA-HS will host a third Master Plan Town Hall, at which point a preliminary draft of the Master Plan 2022-2027 will still be unavailable to the public for review and comment. Whereas VA GLA-HS will conduct a fourth and final town hall, tentatively scheduled for October 2021, which will presumably permit veterans and stakeholders with one opportunity to meet in a public forum post-publication of the preliminary Master Plan 2022-2027 document. Whereas VA GLA-HS currently intends to submit a final draft of the Master Plan 2022-2027 to VA Central Office on December 2nd, 2021. Whereas after town hall meetings on August 19th and September 9th, VCOEB is concerned that some areas were not addressed or represent significant deviations from the prior 2016 draft master plan. These items include but are not limited to a rigorous analysis of permanent supportive housing targets on campus based on current need and supply projections throughout the city and county of Los Angeles. Determination of appropriate housing supply on campus that addresses the necessity for higher levels of care beyond what is typically provided to veterans in permanent supportive housing. A comprehensive overview of VA's leasing powers on campus pursuant to Public Law 114-226 and Public Law 117-18. Clinical staffing and policies required to support veteran residents on campus. Law enforcement staffing and policies required to safely support the campus community. VA Office of Inspector General's 2018 audit and subsequent audit if available. Removal of an independent Zone 4 Town Center project. Removal of an independent Veterans Vocational Enterprise and Cultural Center project located within Zone 5 of the Draft Master Plan. And whereas VCOEB has asked both VA GLA-HS and the West LA Veterans Collective, the principal developer, if a 60 to 90 day extension to the timeline for the master plan revision process would negatively impact housing construction or financing applications. VCOEB has received no indication that such an extension would pose a serious risk to construction, financing, or housing homeless veterans on campus. Now, therefore, let it be 14-01 Alpha recommended that the Secretary of Veterans Affairs not sign a successor master plan by year's end because doing so would not afford adequate opportunity for veteran input and public comment prior to understanding VA's strategic vision for the 388-acre campus. 14-01 Bravo recommended that the Secretary of Veteran Affairs direct VA GLA-HS leadership to develop a preliminary draft of the successor master plan and post it to regulations.gov on December 1st, 2021, permitting the month of December to review its contents. 14-01 Charlie recommended that the Secretary of Veterans Affairs mandate that VA GLA-HS leadership execute a comprehensive communications plan to inform veterans, their families, and the community about the contents of a successor master plan and begin soliciting their feedback in January 2022. 14-01 Delta recommended that the Secretary of Veteran Affairs formalize memorandums of agreement with veteran and community-based organizations to enhance outreach and conduct joint virtual town hall events. The purpose of these events will be to educate the public about the successor master plan and differences between the draft master plan and the new plan, and to provide an opportunity to ask questions and solicit feedback into the public comment record. At a minimum, this outreach should include the Big Six veteran service organizations, but should also include smaller groups advocating for the needs of homeless, female, ethnic minority, and or LGBTQIA plus veterans. VCOEB encourages VA to begin this planning process immediately and include MOAs in the successor master plan to provide a historical record of collaboration with veteran groups, community partners, and stakeholders. 14-01 Echo recommended that the Secretary of Veteran Affairs perform a site visit to VA West Los Angeles for the purpose of signing a successor master plan. And 14-01 Foxtrot recommended that the Secretary of Veteran Affairs adopt a successor master plan for VA West Los Angeles by March 31st, 2022. In witness whereof, the Veterans and Community Oversight and Engagement Board adopts this recommendation as of September 29th, 2021. So again, I apologize for the very long recommendation, but I think it was important to give the public an understanding of the history and how we got here and discuss whether or not this process needs to be extended in order to get the best possible product to the secretary for his approval. And you know, if any of the other Federal Advisory Committee members want to discuss their thoughts, I'll take a sip of water and go on mute for a minute.
Why don't we do it this way? Since we intend to vote on this, let's have a recommendation to approve, and then I'll call for discussion.
This is Rob Begland. I would move the committee or to recommend approval.
Okay, it's been recommended for approval by Mr. Begland. Is there a second?
This is Christine. I second.
Second that.
Okay, we have a proper second. Now let's open for discussion.
I'm happy to lead off, General Hopper. This is Rob Begland. I just want to offer a suggestion as we're thinking about the vote, and that is that it's easy to conceive of the master planning choice as something that is easier right now because we have a prior draft. But I would encourage the committee members to think that while that's an easy thing to default to, I'm not sure it's the case. I actually, as we've talked about this more and more, have come to think that this next revision of the master draft may involve some of the first key choices that are to be made on the use of the campus and the manners in which those different uses overlap, reinforce each other. And so the example I gave before is the temptation is to think that we're just filling in more details. That it's like a painting that just takes a little more detail, but I'm not sure we've done the principal brushstrokes yet. I think we're still sketching out the figures and figuring out how to make this place a beautiful place for veterans and for homeless veterans. So that's just the provocative claim I would make, but I wouldn't want the committee members to think that our work is done because we have a draft that's 5 years old. I think we have some important choices and the public has some important choices ahead. That's all I was going to add.
Thank you, Rob.
General Hopper, it's Josh Bamberger. I just also want to point out, you know, the idea of slowing anything down in a process that has moved at a glacial pace is very uncomfortable for me, as I think it is for many others. That said, and the momentum that is there from the Secretary's speech a few months ago to say, get this done now, get it done well, is also something that is hard to not jump on that bandwagon. That said, there are so many pieces of this draft master plan that seem to not be filled in. How the housing needs are being met when we don't even know how the 3,000 HUD-VASH vouchers that are out there unassigned are going. I mean, if those 3,000 HUD-VASH vouchers were used, would we even need 1,200 units of permanent supportive housing? We don't even know the relationship between how the community plan to reduce homelessness for veterans in Los Angeles is going. So how can we possibly provide adequate oversight for a draft master plan without that information? So I just want to state my discomfort with slowing anything down, but yet recognize that I think it's important to put aside that discomfort to make something of greater quality. So I've come around to that after being reluctant to support this recommendation over the last few months. Thanks.
I'll just add to Josh's comments that I don't think anyone here wants to see any unnecessary delays. But this community engagement piece is necessary. And it's extremely important that VA gets this dialed in right. And GLA's communications are getting better. It's getting better. We see an improvement. However, it's not at the level it needs to be. And I think it needs to partner with the VSOs, partner with the community-based organizations, and leverage their communication networks to get the word out to the broadest possible audience and solicit that veteran feedback into the public comment record. You know, anyone right now can go look up the draft master plan and read all of the public comments. And it was incredibly useful to revising the preliminary draft at that time. And I think that that process worked, and we need to recreate that process to get the best possible product to the secretary. So understanding that VA's communications have improved recently, it needs more work. And partnering with the community is a great way to do that. And at the end of the day, when the secretary signs the revised master plan 2022, you know, the VSO community and the community partners will stand behind them and say, we were consulted, we had an opportunity to participate. And the one other thing I would just add is, you know, this is not a criticism of Secretary McDonough. We would not be having this conversation about a revised master plan without him making this a priority. He's made veterans homelessness a priority. He's made VA West LA a priority. And I think we all thank him for that, to echo General Hopper's comments in the beginning. This is about getting him the best product possible, and that needs more time.
Other comments?
Hamilton, you're breaking up pretty bad. I understand you're trying to speak.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Hamilton, you were breaking up pretty bad. It's unclear. So I think he called in on the phone and
Yeah. Hamilton, are you still there?
General Hopper, I'll just put my comments in the chat section.
Oh, you're good now.
You're great.
Good to go.
Yeah, there is an integrity deficit, or I don't know, is a trust deficit with the VA among a lot of veterans. And though their communications got better, they really need to over communicate. And it has to, this slight delay, which is not going to delay anything long term, I'm all for it, because it's just, if anybody feels left out, no matter how wonderful the master plan is, it's going to be hit with a lot of slings and arrows. So we just slow down a second and give the VSOs a chance to round up everyone possible to participate. That's what needs to happen. The first two times a master plan went out, going all the way back to the old one, they had like 15 comments in the National Register by their own. And it took the VSOs to round up veterans, get them aware of what was going on, to where the comments actually got into the hundreds, if not thousands. So that, if I'm not sure what it is right now, but a slight delay. The train is rolling down the tracks, and I don't want to slow it down, but we really need to have buy-in and give everybody the opportunity to get their 2 bits in.
Thanks, Hamilton. Other comments? Hearing none, I will.
Just one more thing, General. I just want to say,
Yes, Josh.
I also don't want to miss out on the opportunity of pointing out that the recommendations that we made over a year ago have yet to be responded to by the Secretary of the VA. So the idea that we're going to make a recommendation that's going to impact policy in the next few weeks seems a little hard to imagine. But I just want to put out there for Mr. Bursler and others that we are making this recommendation even to try to influence policy as soon as possible. The timing has to be adhered to, that we are, this is something for now, not for a year from now, and use this as, again, as an opportunity to point out that we have worked hard on recommendations that have yet to be responded, and I don't want to miss that opportunity to point that out. So I'll stop.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate that. I think the fact that some of the elements contained within our recommendations have already been acted upon anticipated and acted upon by the VA says that past track record notwithstanding, that this will get the attention it deserves.
Sir, we have two exhibits from the recommendation that I think we've provided just to give the public some additional understanding. I don't know if it's worth pulling those up real quick prior to a vote.
Okay, let's just bring them up very quickly because we need to get to the public comment period. We need to vote,
Sure.
and then we need to get to the public comment period.
So this right here is just excerpts from the draft master plan. There's links. Anyone can go take a look at that regarding the 3-year revision timeline or a 3 to 5 year revision timeline. You know, the thing that I think is critical in understanding here is that, you know, sometimes the argument has been made, well, this is a working draft. It will evolve over time when we revise it. And, you know, standing here today, I'm not sure when we will revise the master plan again, which is why I think it's really important that this public engagement is done as thoroughly as possible. And then the next exhibit. This is what we've offered as a template of the communications plan. It's not meant to be an execution document, but, you know, when we say engage a comprehensive, you know, engagement effort, that's very vague. What does that look like? And we've included, you know, what we think is an appropriate communication strategy moving forward. Obviously, not every organization that we've listed here may be available or willing to participate, but it does give VA a lot of time between now and the end of the year to negotiate these partnerships with the VSOs, to put a date on the calendar to ensure that the VSOs can promote that everyone's got access to the information ahead of time, and so that we can have a great public discussion about what the plan looks like. Because at this point in time right now, we don't know what the plan looks like. And I think that we need to ensure that that's done right. Put it out to the public, give the public time to review it, to read it, and then give the public an opportunity to ask questions. And if they support it, great. Go to the Federal Register or regulations.gov and put in your 2 cents. If you disagree with certain aspects of it, that's okay too. Put your feedback into regulations.gov so we can all benefit from that process. So those are the 2 exhibits we wanted to point out, and we can move forward with a motion to vote if that's what everyone's comfortable doing.
Okay, any more? Thanks, Anthony. Any more discussion items? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the question. Eugene, how do you want to record the vote?
Sir, if we can go by name, it would be good for this one, I believe, sir.
Okay, John Hopper votes aye.
Okay. Anthony Allman,
Aye.
Dr. Bamberger,
Aye.
Ms. Stanley,
Aye.
Ms. Marshall, Mr. Beglin.
I'm from Scotland.
Okay. I see Mary Ellen Holmes, and I'm going to assume that's Mr. Mangano. Dr. Wellish,
Aye.
Mr. Underwood. And then I get Mr. Rosenfeld. He is on the phone, sir. I'm going to have to get him later. But even with that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I believe Jennifer Marshall is on the call-in line as well.
Okay. It's hard to decipher which one they are, though, on the call. So, but even with that, sir, we do have, you know, you do have a quorum. You do have a majority amongst the voting members. So right now it passes with aye. We do have 3 non-voting members on the line, but we won't even call the name, sir.
Okay, if you could just follow up with.
Yes, sir. For the record, I will. Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So the recommendation passes. We will get that ready with a cover letter to forward to the secretary ASAP. Let's move on now and get to the public comment period. I think we have 6 people signed up for comments. We will get to you all, so please stay on the line. Eugene, any words before we start the public comment?
Just a reminder that I will call your name. It's those who I have here on the phone. You just bear with me, and we'll try to get the public comment folks who called in on the phone. You have 5 minutes, and so what I'll do is I'll take you off mute. It's Turner. Where are you?
Eugene, while you're getting ready to take them off mute, let me just add that we did receive a letter from the DAV, which we will attribute to the public comment period. That letter will be part of the record of this board, and those interested can read it in the minutes of this board meeting.
And sir, I might add that we also, okay, I just got a note from Ms. Marshall as far as the vote. We also got public comment, a written public comment from Mr. Howard Hernandez, which will be part of the record as well. With that said, Ms. Turner, are you on?
I am, and I usually just put a placeholder in case there's something from the.
Ma'am, I can't hear you. Please, can you speak up?
Yes, I just usually put my name in as a placeholder in case Congressman Liu has any comments, and we have none at this time, except to express our deep appreciation to all of you for all your hard work. That's all from me.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll move on now to Ms. Travers. Ms. Travers, are you there?
I am indeed. Thank you.
Your time starts now.
Thank you to the board members for allowing me to speak. My first comment is I do take some umbrage at the assertion that some of the veterans that are outside Veterans Row have been told by advocates to, not take any opportunity to rehouse themselves. I think what they do object to is, can somebody mute themselves? I'm reclaiming my time, please.
I am trying to find who's on the line. I can't. Go ahead, ma'am.
If possible, I'd like to start my 5 minutes again.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, the assertion that they, that they don't want to be housed and are there, purposefully. And, I do believe that the objection is more that if they feel that that area is their home, then if that's their home, then I see the objection being shipped somewhere else that they might not want to be. That does not mean that they want to be housed or that they're there for any other reason. But I could see where they, would object to being moved or shipped somewhere that they are unfamiliar to or don't want to be. The second is I'd like to push back on that large number of seniors that's been allocated for the housing, for the permanent housing as an aging population. I think there are a lot of Iraqi and Afghanistan soldiers that are in their 50s that are going to need housing, the younger generations as well, who are going to need some kind of facility and support. And so we need to think, there's an Indian saying that you always should think 7 generations ahead. How is this going to impact the next 7? I think it's the Iroquois who say the next 7 generations. And I feel that a lot of what's being thought about is sort of more the immediacy. And I would like the board to sort of consider further down the road how this is going to impact. I mean, even the studies that were done with 2015 and 2019, and here we are in 2021 with a complete withdrawal. How is that going to impact, and how are those services going to be facilitated best for those veterans? Again, when we're talking about enhanced use leases, when we're talking about services, are we talking about specifying legally or in paper somewhere that accommodates for things like functioning efficiently of a CTRS, of same day immediate shelter on property for vets that operate 24 hours. They can stay on the property. If they arrive after hours, can they complete a mission in one day? I think if you leave it to the vagaries, then there's a lot of room for mismanagement or misinterpretation or allowing people to fall through the cracks. So if we're going to be recommending something, to consider that fallout. The last thing, and thank you very much again for your time, everyone, is what is in place. A lot of this master plan sounds very utopian and it sounds beautiful and lovely, but what is going to happen if there's any kind of pushback from the community on any quote unquote undesirable types that need to use those facilities? Are they, at what point do we, as the VA, push back and say, this is VA land, this was given to us for the management of veterans, and this not have this Pollyannish, are we picking and choosing model veterans that need housing? Are we only going to let the pretty ones in and the nice ones in that can engage with the community in a way that the community approves of? How are the undesirables going to be shipped off somewhere where they're not seen or handled? And I just, I sit through a lot of these board meetings and I'm very grateful to be allowed to be in attendance, but a lot of this is the logistics and it doesn't really address any of the sort of social, economic, optics. And I hesitate to use the word optics, but it doesn't, the dynamics of how this is going to go. And especially with these enhanced use leases, that is giving these people, corporate entities, developers, a sense of entitlement. If we wanted UCL off that land, for example, how are we going to get them off that land? If there's, quote unquote squatters' rights. And I appreciate the fact that we want to engage with all the entities that are stakeholders. But at what point do we advocate for the veterans if it turns out that there might be some unpleasantness or something that is not ideal for the outside external community? Anyway, I'm sure I've gone through my time. I want to thank everybody for listening and hope that some of these things are thought about, down the road. Against 7 generations, there will always be a military. We will always have veterans. And so we can't see this as a very short term, only 1,200 people and they're all old and they're going to die. And then, we're just going to rent it out to low income housing. Or I just want to be careful of the pitfalls and make sure that if we're veteran centric, that we stay veteran centric.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for your time.
All right. So I'm going to do this. Next on the public comment is Mr. Corey Robichaud. Are you on the line, sir? Mr. Robichaud. With that said, the next individual we have signed up is Mr. Rob Reynolds.
Yep,
Mr. Reynolds, you on the line, sir?
I am, yes.
Yes, sir. So your time starts now.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say it's rather telling how, in the last year, still Congressman Ted Lieu fails to come to one of these meetings or do anything to address this situation when he's the one writing all the legislation that is negatively affecting everyone. Additionally, if everyone continues to believe that the homeless veterans outside the VA is a protest encampment, you're in for a big surprise, because the reason why that encampment has not been removed, despite all the sheriffs being out there and the county and everyone being involved, is because there's constantly new veterans showing up. And the hours of admission to get into the programs are too short. We have veterans showing up at evening that we're having to place on the sidewalk. I mean, how hard would it be to have a 24-hour shelter on the property where these guys can come to and show up any time of day or night? And the fact is, you have the domiciliary, New Directions, a bridge home, and CTRS all located by the Eisenhower Gate. And yet to get into any of those programs, you have to go nearly a mile away to building 402. When someone's in a wheelchair or a walker and they have all their luggage, that's not really feasible. It doesn't even make sense. We've been asking for some type of transportation to get veterans from the Eisenhower Gate to Building 402. That has not come through yet. We've asked for very simple things like signs explaining to people how to get around the campus. That has not been done yet. When is this going to be treated like the emergent situation it is? I've sat through 2 murder investigations, 14 and a half hours the first time, 13 hours the second time. I've dealt with other veterans dying. This is a serious situation. And I think that, you know, all the stuff that you guys are talking about planning on the property, that's great and all, but we have some emergent situations that need to be addressed. Having some type of shelter on the property like there used to be, like the Exodus Lodge, like the Haven, which were all removed, like the emergency shelter beds at 257, which was removed. That would give veterans a chance to actually have somewhere to show up, and would also give them a chance when they're kicked out of programs that they have something to fall back on. Because every time someone is removed from one of the programs in the VA, the first place they go is San Vicente Boulevard. When a homeless veteran goes to the hospital, the emergency room, after hours at 7 p.m. at night to get treatment, when they are released, there's nowhere for the hospital to send them on the property. They come to Veterans Row out on the sidewalk. If you had something on the property that operated like a shelter 24 hours a day, just to give someone a bed and a place to stay if they're a veteran, it would alleviate the majority of these problems. And I will tell you that until that happens and until this stuff gets resolved, if there is a need for veterans that need shelter and need somewhere to stay, I'm going to continue helping to provide that and working with those veterans. So this is something that we need to get fixed. This has been going on way too long, way too long. There's been too many deaths. There's been too much crap. It needs to be fixed. And it's really not that difficult. Everyone just needs to come together and get these situations addressed. And communication is a serious issue. There is a lack of communication between Building 402, the Welcome Center. I see it all the time. We'll send a veteran one place, they're told one thing. We send them somewhere else, they're told another thing. There needs to be more tracking of these veterans, overwatching them from their case managers. You know, when they're being removed from a program, they need to stay on top of them and make sure that they're actually getting, you know, some housement placing or something, or that they're keeping track of them so that they don't end up back out on the street. Because I'm telling you, every time something goes on in any of the programs and they're removed, first place they come is Veterans Row. And we need something on the property that can be a fixture for these guys to come to that's not the sidewalk. That street is no place for anybody to be. We all want them on the other side of the fence. And the fact is, you know, it appears to myself and everyone else that the focus is always safeguarding these controversial leases on the property. I won't even call them illegal. Even this new Inspector General report I read in it, that there's still leases that are not compliant with the West Los Angeles Leasing Act. There's still a lot of nonsense going on. I mean, just in January, we had UCLA trying to get a new baseball stadium in an area that was deemed as open green space in the last master plan. And it just seems that there's not a lot of transparency and a lot of things are not spoke about. And that really needs to change. And we also need to get back into in-person meetings. I'm pretty sure the majority of people are vaccinated now. It's just going to make for much better engagement. And there needs to be much more engagement with the homeless veterans themselves, actually talking to them and seeing what roadblocks and barriers that they're running into. Because I hear them all the time and I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall trying to tell all of you guys this. So it's time for everyone to start meeting with them and getting accurate veteran input. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm just a minute here. Just one more opportunity to call out to Mr. Corey Roberchard. Are you on the line, sir? Mr. Roberchard. Okay, we'll move to Mr. Wright. Are you on the line, sir?
Yes, thank you
Will
so
Wright.
much. My name is Will Wright. I work here for the Los Angeles chapter of the American Institute of Architects, and I want to thank you all for your leadership and your commitment. Although I'm not a veteran, I'm the grandson of a veteran, Lieutenant Colonel Robert Earl Wright, who firsthand I got to see how the Veterans Administration served as a tremendous resource to him and his life and his family. And so I want to personally thank you for all of that. With regards to this campus, I really do want to offer the resources of the LA chapter of the American Institute of Architects as a professional outreach that you can leverage to gain insight and input as you start to to work with this updated master plan. We're here for that. I do think that we really want to look at a way to make this master plan reflect a complete community where there's job training, workforce development, opportunities for veterans to really find a home and find a place to be that welcomes all. And with regards to that, I also want to make sure that there's an opportunity to reflect on the campus and the expenditures that are going in currently into the natural gas infrastructure do not make sense to me. We're looking at housing opportunities here, and how do we optimize our investment in the housing opportunities for veterans? Adding millions of dollars to the burden by installing a natural gas installation not only does disservice to those veterans, but it also is going in the complete wrong direction with regards to our decarbonization goals. And so I highly encourage you, through whatever process possible, to update the master plan so that you're looking at 100% all electric campus. So with that said, I just want to say thank you so much for your leadership and your time. I welcome your input to how to connect so that we can help leverage more professional outreach with regards to the American Institute of Architects and how we can serve this master plan in a way that brings more of the community together. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. And the last individual for public comments today is Mr. Scott Mulvaney. Sir, are you there?
I'm here, General. Thank you.
Your time starts now, sir.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the board for allowing me to speak. I'm Scott Mulvaney. I'm a Marine Corps veteran and the head of operations at the Heroes Golf Course. We serve thousands of veterans a year in providing recreation, and we also serve groups that involve mindfulness meditation and golf, cardiac groups that come here. We basically are a hub for both veterans on campus from the DOM and New Directions who come here, and also veterans who are living off campus. So I just wanted to basically say thank you and to urge the board to think long-term, being able to see opportunities for the veterans community that comes here for increased exercise in all ways. I mean, we have veterans here who are beneficiaries of the GeroFit programs, a lot of different programs. And I think as we expand the community on campus, what we'll see is, a need for those veterans on campus to be able to engage in recreational activities and physical therapy activities that involve a fairly wide range of abilities. Some of our basically some of our older vets who have limited mobility are able to come up here and putt and do very light exercise on the course. Others are able to do much more on the course. But it would be nice if we had a fully concerted effort towards bringing together all these different resources that we have. And I know that a lot of the veterans who come here speak regularly. This is kind of a communications hub for veterans, talking about what they would like to see. And I think, a great many of them are also applying for the housing that's coming up as well. But, they would like to get more use out of the campus. And I think it goes along with the, with what we're trying to do with a healthy body, healthy mind. And, as a veteran who's experienced PTSD and has found this place to be a little bit of a paradise, I think if we expand that, we can have a healthier community, especially our older community that really, that requires more of a, more of an opportunity to be invited to be healthier and be given the kind of be given direction towards what they can do for themselves in order to, improve their medical and mental condition. So I just wanted to put that out there. And, if anybody wants any further information, we're up here at the Heroes Golf Course, and you can speak to me anytime if you have any questions. Thank you very much. I appreciate everything you do.
Thank you, sir. And once again, those of you who signed up for public comment, but we didn't have the time due to the abbreviated meeting today, or if you would have comments you would like to provide, please email them as you see on the screen to veofaca@va.gov, and we'll include them in the official meeting records. Sir, just a update via email. I did get 2 additional yays for the vote from, from Dan Roosevelt and Ms. Marshall. So now it's 9 yays, sir, with regards to the recommendation.
Okay, very good. Okay, I think this wraps up our agenda for this meeting. Let me just thank everyone that participated. I don't think Mr. Bursler is still on the line from VEO, but Chief Bradshaw.
Yes, sir, I am. Thank you very much for everything.
Okay, thank you. Any closing comments, John?
Well, I just wanted to thank the committee and especially everyone who worked so hard on this. I think we're going to get to accomplish a lot of these objectives and recommendations set forth. So thank you all again, and thanks for having me, sir.
Very good. Thank you. And Dr. Braverman is still with us. Thanks so much for the work that you and your staff have put in, Dr. Braverman, and the responses to our questions, particularly for this particular VCLEB session. Any closing thoughts?
Just to say thank you for everybody who is expressing their opinions today. And I want to make sure I wasn't misunderstood in my opening comments based on a couple of the replies. I'm not suggesting that individual veterans are making decisions to stay at the San Vicente encampment out of protest. I was only suggesting that there are a few so-called advocates who are trying to present that as an option. That's all I was saying. So thank you to those who are assisting those veterans who choose to go there for a variety of reasons, in some cases because they feel like we're not providing the support and assistance that they require, and we'll continue to work towards improving that. Over.
Okay, Dr. Braverman, thanks very much. To members of the public that were able to join us today, we really appreciate you signing up, for your perseverance and sitting through a fairly long agenda today. And for those that provided public comments, thank you very much for those comments. We do appreciate those, and we will certainly take them very seriously. And finally, to the board itself, this has been something of a slog to try and handle this quickly. Frankly, virtual meetings, the ability to be virtual has been a benefit for us, because we could in fact respond with a little more agility than if we had to gather up and get everybody out to the West LA campus. So I appreciate all the work that you've gone through. Master Plan Subcommittee, great job. Services Subcommittee, some very key questions today. So I know that you're hard at work as well. And I really do appreciate the effort. So I think that's all that I've got. I'll give it back to the DFO for any closing administrative comments.
Sir, no comment from me. I have none. I think it was a great meeting. And again, thanks for everyone's participation. Thanks for the timely submission of all the material that was required to put this together from GLA as well as from internally at the VCOEB. That's all I have, sir. Back over to you.
Okay, very good. Board members, any closing thoughts?
I just wanted to thank the Master Plan Subcommittee. And, it's been a flurry of emails, 14 different versions, looking at all the information, and for the Services Subcommittee for reading through all of that. And, I appreciate everyone's time. So thank you.
There you go, Anthony, assuming again that we read your emails, but we'll let you hang on to that fantasy for a while longer. Anybody else? Mark? Okay, good job, folks. Thanks so much. Out here.
Out here, sir.
Eugene?
Yeah, Anthony.
Just wanted to
Still
say
recording.
thank you. I understand. Just wanted to say thank you. Appreciate your time. I know there's a lot of work going into this.
Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate you.
Best CFO. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, man. Janet, I see you're still on. Thank you so much for your support.
No problem. I'm not sure that your member ever came on. I kept looking for
Yeah,
him.
he came on.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, he sent me an email that he was on. So
Okay.
thank you.
Good.
Thank you, Eugene and Janet. I'm signing off.
All right. Thank you, Maggie.
Thanks,
All
Maggie.
right. I'm stopping the recording and shutting the meeting down.